Welcome back to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazuki Network. I am DC, your host, your hostess with the mostest. At least that's what they say. I don't know. I mean, I believe it. I'm not sure. But anyway, hey, check this out. Brand new show today. And what we got going on in our country, y'all, is we've got a powder keg going on right now. And we'll get into a little bit more of that as we go down. But first of all, let's talk about the 41 plus million Americans who have filed for unemployment benefits. For some odd reason, our president tends to want to focus on some other things, but the economy right now, for a lot of us, is at a standstill. And so, in order for us to be able to make it past the first of the month or the next first of the month, we're going to need Heroes Act, that fourth, as some people would call that, I guess that fourth, so to speak, stimulus package kicked in. Let me give you a phone number because I want our listeners and the folks who are viewing this right now to write this thing down or listen very carefully. This number is 202 224 3121. I've given you that number before. 202 224 3121. That is the main switchboard to the United States Senate. That's right, folks, the United States Senate. No sense of calling Senator Lamar Alexander, Senator Marsha Blackburn. Call who matters. Call Mitch McConnell. He's the floor leader. He's the majority leader of the U.S. Senate. Call and leave a message with his office and say, Mr. Senator, please introduce the HEROES Act that was passed May 15th, 2020. Please introduce that to the floor of the Senate. We need an up or down vote. There is no way around it. We need an up or down vote. Please and thank you. Just simple as that. Please and thank you. You know, there also seems to be some talk in our country right now. We have a powder keg going on around the country. There is no doubt. Race again has raised its ugly head, and this time it has raised its ugly heads through some normal channels. There are some bad apples in this particular law enforcement community. For some odd reason, the state of Minnesota has its share. This isn't the first time this happened. I can remember Philando Castile, and there's some others up there that have faced some similar situations and have not lived to talk about it. Well, the Boston Tea Party, and I will remind you that the Boston Tea Party, as I'm told, these revolutionists they were thugs. These guys were thugs. They scurried onto a British ship and they dumped all of this tea, some stuff that somebody else bought, and they dumped it. But now, would you call those guys thugs too? Hmm. They were fighting for what they thought was right. They were fighting for the fact that they did not believe that taxation without representation should be the law of the land. So now we've got people, we've got citizens, we've got Americans hitting the streets, and they're saying that I want to get to court for you to hear my case, but I can't get to court because you left me in a body bag on a street somewhere. And something about that, we've got to juxtapose this here. If you can call the folks on the street today thugs, then you damn sure can call the folks, the revolutionists back in the late 1700s. You can call them thugs as well too, right? And that's all I got to say about that. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. But again, on today's show, we've got Paulo Nunes-Ueno, who is a transportation and mobility expert who we've had on the show before. And we talked a lot about we talked about Seattle. He's from Seattle, Washington, no doubt about it. And this guy is very smart. He knows everything, and we're going to bring him on the show right now. No further ado, I want to introduce to you all, my listeners and my viewers, Paulo Nunes-Ueno. Welcome to Funky Politics again, Paulo. How are you, sir?
I'm all right, DC.
How are
How you
you doing,
doing?
man? I'm hanging in there the best I possibly can. With everything that's going on in our country right now, I know you guys, you may not be facing this particular issue now, but knowing how Seattle and a lot of the Northwest is, it's not far from you all to be able to take up arms as well. Any great protest starts with a lot of people, and sometimes it's going to be the young people that are going to do this thing, right? And I think that's what we're seeing right now in our streets. But before I get to that, Paulo, our last combo, we talked a lot about these remedies that were suggested by the president, and of course, they've been debunked by scientists. And that is the flattening of this curve. You all have finally flattened the curve in the Washington area. How the heck did you do it? What happened?
Well, the interesting, surprising thing to me about the how fast the disease spreads is that the question of closing a few days earlier, a week earlier, makes such a huge difference. And so, Washington was first to see a case of COVID and then acted really quickly. And I think that's had a really big impact. And so the situation now is that the governor has a phased reopening plan, and he set very clear criteria that each county has to meet in order to be able to go to the next phase. And I really appreciate the governor's office for communicating this so clearly, for all of our public health entities in Washington taking the lead in communicating what's going on. And so I think that the important thing for everybody to know is that if we reopen too soon, it'll just come back and we're going
Sure.
to close again.
Sure.
And it's not going to go away by itself, and it's going to take a lot of vigilance. It's going to take a lot of people working together. I can go through the criteria if you want. It's testing, it's making sure that we have hospital capacity, it's making sure that there's protective equipment for the frontline workers, it's making sure that we have a system to trace people that have had contact with the
Sure.
people that they got infected, and then really importantly is a place for people to quarantine. Because DC, if I get sick or if I get infected and I just quarantine with my family, they're all going to get sick.
That's correct. That's correct.
So that doesn't limit the spread of it. So I just feel like, if anything, what this what the virus has shown is that governing is important, and we
Yes.
need people that have chops to
Whoa.
actually
Did you say leadership? Did you
that
say
leadership,
you need?
right?
Oh, wow. Big
This stuff,
word here.
it
Yeah.
doesn't get done with just kind of
Mm.
making big pronouncements. It's the hard everyday work of professionals who run our counties, who run our health systems, who run the public health departments.
Paulo, in your estimation, what does Washington look like? What does Redmond look like? What does Seattle look like? What do you all look like post? And I know I'm asking you to look into this major crystal ball. You're a smart guy. Figure it out. What does it look like for you guys once we have really gotten over the hump? And let me say this. That's once we get over, and I don't think anybody knows that, but is there something that's going to be different? Is that major transportation system you all have in Seattle, is that going to be the same anymore?
Oh man, that's such a hard question to answer. I think that the honest answer is we don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We just don't know. But I tell you, so the big employer around here, they run the gamut. There's, like we talked about last time, there's Boeing, and
Oh,
you need to
wow.
be
Yeah.
there to put the rivets on the airplane
Sure.
to put it together. And then there's Amazon and Microsoft. And so Boeing was having problems already, and they're laying off 7,000 people, and there's more to come.
Wow.
And Amazon and Microsoft are doing quite well. And the big difference also is that that's a workforce that can work remotely.
Hmm.
So Amazon has said, don't come back to the office until October 2nd. We're not even opening our offices for
Wait,
people to
wait,
come
wait.
to
Did
work.
you just say October
Yeah,
2nd?
that's right.
This is early summer. Well, I guess we are considered to be early summer now. October 2nd. Oh my gosh, man. So they've made a commitment to say, look, we know that this thing ain't all right. In other words, it ain't all right. And before we bring a mass number of people back, but now, what happens to the barrister at Starbucks? What happens to the guy who works at maybe I guess you guys may have the 7-Eleven or the Exxon, where somebody runs in after work and they grab a beer, or they get cigarettes, or they get lottery tickets. What happened to those businesses, at all, Paulo?
Um, I I think that very few of them will survive unless they can adapt to this new situation, because I think that the businesses that rely on walk-in customers, like you were saying, the corner store, and that business is just not there for the foreseeable future, I think.
And you look at it in Washington, then you look at it. I got friends in California who say they're still under a stay-at-home order. So there's very little opened in California. And you're talking about a state. You're talking about the largest state in the union.
Yeah.
And so I can only imagine that the barbershops, the walk-in traffic stores, as you say, the subways, and I'm not pubbing up any particular store over another one. But now, when you think about it, I don't order Subway online. I just go get it, don't I? I go get me a sub.
Yeah, well, that's different now, right? I
Sure,
mean, we're also in a stay-at-home order in most of the state, and some counties have met some of the criteria, but have
sure.
not met all of the criteria. But people
Mhm.
are really eager to go back. But you know, we don't have a cure, we don't have a treatment. We really haven't done that much to improve our testing capacity or to protect our frontline workers. So I think I totally understandable that people are getting cabin fever and they want to
Sure.
get out there, but nothing has changed in terms of dealing with the actual infections.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, I know you got a lot of friends around the area that you talk to. What about the psyche of the people? How you guys have probably had one of the longest. I think you all have had the longest stay-at-home order of anybody in the country. I mean, like you said, at some point, cabin fever. Man, I'm ready to. I like the dog. I love the wife, but now I'm not liking the dog like I thought. Now, the wife and I, I mean, the psyche of Washingtonians has got to be at some point near break level.
I know. And, people find ways to connect at a distance.
Yeah.
There's a guy in my neighborhood who I think he's a professional opera singer. And what he's
Oh,
been doing every weekend is he sets up a speaker in his front lawn and he stands there and he sings arias. And people will come and set out, lawn
wow.
furniture and stand there on the street, and it's such a release. It's such like a really really heartfelt community. It's a gift that he's giving to the community, and I can sense that people love it. But at the same time, it's it's untold the how difficult this is for people. We're social animals. We need
Yeah,
to be in
sure.
contact with people.
Sure. And you say that he's singing arias out there in his in his front yard, and people are probably getting lawn chairs. I'm sure they're socially distancing, but they're listening to a free concert, which in most cases I can't stop to go downtown, go into town to take the tram or whatever to get in to see. I guess COVID has done a lot of negative, but I think in some instances, when it comes to family and friends, some of us have probably reconnected as well too. And you're seeing a lot of this with a lot of entertainers going online. They're just doing free concerts because it's driving them mad that they can't get out and perform, right?
Yeah. Well, human beings, we
Yeah,
adapt. You know.
yeah, we do adapt. Speaking of adaptation, there's a lot of talk right now about voting by mail. I know in Tennessee, and one of the criteria in our state is that you have to be, and it's several. There's some about being out of town. There's some about, and these are absentee ballots I'm talking about, to request an absentee ballot. The main criteria, or one of the criteria that we're going to be trying to push with our seniors is that if you're a senior at the age of 60, and God help us, 60 is senior. In a few years, I'll be staring at that. So I guess in this COVID-19 space, how do we convince our seniors? Because you guys have done voting by mail for years. I mean, seniors, you got your millennials, you got your Gen Zers, you got your boom, you got everybody who's done voting by mail. How do we help convince our people in the South, especially when we've been traditionally walking in the polls, Paulo?
Well, I think that it's important to communicate to folks, and so that there's clear understanding of the that this is your ballot. You just have to fill it out. You just have to drop it off or mail it. This isn't. I think that at the beginning, people may be confused. Is this information that's coming to me so that I can go to a voting place, and really make it clear that no, this is your ballot. You get to keep it for a certain number of days or weeks, and then you need to return it. And really clearly explaining the mechanics of that, I think, is going to be important for particularly for seniors, but for everybody.
Sure.
It's something that nobody's done before, and a lot of investment needs to be made to just make sure that people understand how to do it.
I think right now in a lot of our states, we've got early voting going on because there are primary elections coming up in August, general primary elections coming up general elections coming up in a lot of our states, and also for some of our primaries for our national offices. And I'm not heard a lot on the radio about they're pushing this narrative that if you're sick, and I think it's probably the same in most states, that at least if you're 60, you can request this absentee ballot. And in light of this COVID piece right now, we're encouraging our seniors really to kind of just, for lack of a better term, really stay home. I
Yeah,
talked to a friend of
yeah.
mine when her aunt, she's 95 years old, and she says all I've done the last several years of my life is go to the grocery store and go to church, and she goes to vote. So now we've taken church, we've taken grocery store, and now we're actually asking them if you'll mail in a ballot. At some point, our seniors are going to say, "Wait a minute, are they throwing me away early?" I mean, because have you seen that also, Paulo, where it's just that it looks like you guys can't do this anymore now. What happens to those seniors?
Yeah, I don't know that there's anybody that has a big nostalgia for standing in
Sure.
line to vote. I think that you know it really, I think, is our responsibility as a society to make it as easy as possible for people to exercise their franchise, right?
Yeah.
And for people to be able to, yeah, we talked about this last time. I think that there is a really big piece that is not talked about so much in terms of mail-in voting, is that you get to spend time with your
Yes.
ballot at your house,
Yeah. Remember, you and I
right?
talked
so
about that. That's exactly right.
so
Yes.
that so that you can, a lot of times what people do here in Washington is they get a voter information pamphlet from the Secretary of State, and then they get their ballot from the county. And then you have a few weeks where both of those pieces of mail are sitting in your house, and you can flip back and forth and say, here's DC, he's running for dog catcher, what does he
Yeah.
say about dog catching?
Yeah.
And look, there's his picture, that's, oh look, he's going to do it this way.
Yeah.
Here's the guy that's running against him, and he's going to do it the other way. So you can it's just such a much more informed way to make this crucial decision that we make as a society. That, I mean, clearly Republicans have a huge investment in as few people as possible voting,
Mm,
because that's the way that they win elections. But
yeah.
the fact is that it shouldn't just be people that are 60 or over in Tennessee that get anybody who wants it should be able
Sure.
to request a ballot, because it makes them a better voter. It makes them a more informed voter. It
Exactly.
allows them to make decisions that have time and have thought. So.
In light of that, I wonder, do the politicians want me to be informed? I wonder, do they want me to be educated? Because maybe not, right?
Right,
Vote
right.
for my name. Vote for my name. And speaking of voting for a name, in your opinion, Anae, do you think that the response to COVID-19 will be a referendum in November 3rd on the president's administration? I mean, I've heard a lot of talk on one side. Well, the economy is going to get better, and they won't even look at this COVID. I've heard a lot of people say he fumbled. He just fumbled. He wasn't responsible for the COVID getting here, but his responsibility was led. He it was leadership. What was his leadership? Do you see the same thing?
Well, I sure hope so. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, if we don't look at this performance and think this person doesn't know how to fly the airplane, let alone land it during a storm,
Whoa,
then I don't know that we're paying attention,
whoa.
right?
Mm,
And
mm.
we elected somebody who didn't profess to have any expertise in running government, didn't seem to have any special feeling for what it is to lead people during good times.
Let alone
Now,
bad times, right?
right, let alone bad times.
Yeah,
So I sure hope so, but I who
yeah.
knows?
Hey,
Predictions,
hey, we have a very fickle electorate, right? And sometimes I think we forget very quickly, but then I think some of us take some things to the grave, right? And I think this is going to be one of those things, in my opinion, that I think November 3rd. Those who are fed up and those who think it was fumbled will definitely vote, and I think they're going to vote in numbers. And in my personal opinion, I think he's going to lose. That's my prediction. Switching gears. So I want to
yeah,
go, and we want to talk about a lot of your expertise, and that is um, the tech side. You do have Amazon there in Seattle. You do have Boeing there, and we talked about Boeing. It's hard to put a rivet into the side of a wall on a plane from home. That's not going to happen. But you do have Microsoft. So have we gotten to the point, before we go into some of those technical things, have we gotten to the point where the virtual meeting now, Paulo, all of this travel that you do will probably come down to what we're doing right now, just talking virtually?
I think so. I
Mm,
think so. I think that there's no way
mm,
around it. That
mm,
I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm just reading the news like everybody else. But
hmm.
my feeling is that people won't feel safe going back to an office the way that they used to. That we used to think that, oh, I'm really macho. I have a little fever, but I can
Mm,
still go to the office and
exactly.
be this tough worker. And that entire mindset is going to go out the window. And it in all honesty, we are probably not going to come back with the full team back into a tight workspace for years. It's going to be
Whoa.
this slow phase in of saying, did you take your test? Did
Yes.
you what have you been in contact with anybody who did test positive? Do you have a temperature? Are you a lot of the way that schools are coming back in Europe is they're splitting the cohort in half, and you come back to school part of
Mm,
the time, and you go to school remotely part of the time. And so I just think that we need to be honest about the
sure.
reality here and adapt. We need to look at this and say, what can we learn?
Speaking of adapting, and I've talked to hundreds of people about your theory on the show we had on you with you almost 2 months ago. We talked about work and what is work. Is it what I do or is it where I go? And when I posed it to them, it was like, oh my god, these are folks. I was just talking to an engineer yesterday at FedEx, and he was like, I never thought about it. He said, "What I do, I actually can do it from home," and he said, "Man, that's freaky. I never thought about it that way." I want to get back. I want to revisit that issue now because it appears that the Microsofts and the Apples and the, God help us, the Amazons and some of these other major we don't even want to talk about the bun traders, right? I mean, do you have to be there on the floor? Does it have to happen like that? When I'm at my office, I can sit there and watch the ticker tape all day and I can buy and sell.
Yeah.
So, now, but I still got folks who are working in support. I got the clerks, I've got the secretaries, and some of these folks are not making the wages that those folks can telework, right? Paula, what does that look like?
I think we have to completely rethink workplace equity, right? That
Mm,
the people that are frontline workers that have to be present, they have to be paid
yeah,
according to the risk
yeah,
that they're taking, right?
yeah.
And we have to rethink, like when you are an important person, they give you this big corner office, but in fact, that person could probably work from home and doesn't need an office at all, right? And when they do come in, they can probably have a laptop and work from that for a little bit. But the person, like you're saying, who's sorting the mail, who has
Yeah.
to be there in person, how do we redistribute the space so that it is based on the function, not based on the title, right? Um, Other things that I think about is that, like I said, I'm just reading the news like everybody else. It seems like the risk of infection outdoors is a lot lower than indoors. So,
Whoa, whoa.
right?
Yes, yes,
So
that's right. Yeah.
so
Mm.
why don't I, when I come to visit you, DC, why don't we schedule a half an hour, a 45-minute walking meeting outside
Mercy.
and do our business in that way, right? And there's weather, there's things that we have to think about, but we have
Sure.
to adapt. But I just think that we really need to rethink these assumptions that we had, that work looks in this way. A meeting is two people sitting down face to face, and it doesn't have to be that way. We can reconfigure our workspaces to be ventilated different, to
Sure.
create outside spaces so that you can have some interaction and have a productive meeting that's in walking, or it's sitting at a picnic bench, or it's somewhere outside that has ventilation. So I just think that we're going to have to go piece by piece of, and take a look at all of these elements of the thing that we call work, and question whether it still makes sense in this new reality.
Well, and we've talked about this before, but wouldn't that lend more teleworking? Wouldn't that lend to a disparity in terms of now, Paulo? You got, as we just talked about, you're the security officer at the front desk, or you're the receptionist at the. You still got to show up, but I'm the VP of sales and information technology. I'm at the house. I got my laptop open and I'm drinking lattes and maybe a beer every once in a while, and I'm meeting. But now I'm going to call this. I'm going to call the receptionist. Any mail come in for me? You know, I think we still create a stratification here somewhere. And
Oh
that I
yeah.
don't think that helps. I don't think that helps our total systems like a FedEx with better than 100,000 employees. I mean, I can see easily 70% of those people working from home.
Yes, I mean, I think that what you're talking about, DC, is that we need to really refocus on how vital those uh, members of the workforce that are showing up in person are to
Yeah,
support the
sure.
people that are able to work from home, right? So I think that means that we need to have a broader definition of what we mean by essential employee. It's your bus driver.
Sure.
That's somebody who's signed up to do a difficult job that helps people out, and who now is signed up to do a job that puts her life in danger.
Sanitation workers. Think about it.
Right, right.
If something spill, I've got to pick it up. I've got to I got to ride with this. I'm riding on the back of the truck or
Yeah,
inside the truck, and whatever that is that just came out of your house is now with me. But I can assure you that sanitation workers don't make 20 something dollars an hour. They
yeah,
just don't.
yeah.
But now you take a, let's just say, a programming analyst, and I understand there's a little bit more certification and education to that, but still I'm programming a laptop, or I'm working with the mainframe or what have you, working with end users. But come on, Paulo, I'm the one who's out here in the elements taking care of. If I don't move it, you're gonna lose it when you come home and you see this stuff sitting out, right?
That's right. That's right. And I think that we just need to have an open conversation about
Yeah,
how these are, just like we were talking about, the folks that make the public health services run, to make our healthcare system run. We can't have a society without those folks, and we
sure.
need to pay them accordingly. We have to protect them properly. We have to give them the respect that they're due.
Look at the nursing homes in Seattle, in your area of the country, where there was an outbreak in that nursing home that killed several people, right? I mean, many people. And who was there? Who had to be there with them every day? The
Yeah,
nursing assistants.
yeah,
I'm assuming and I've seen it down here in my part of the country. You may have a doctor at one of those. They're not there all day. You may have a couple of RNs or BSNs on the floors, but for the most part, you got LPNs and you got CNAs, certified nursing assistants, or medical assistants. And those folks make the least amount of money, but
yeah,
they are in charge of my
yeah,
grandmother or my mother or my
yeah.
father.
That's right. You know, I used to work. I did transportation and sustainability stuff, and I used to work at a hospital. But one thing that they taught us there, and they taught everybody there, which I thought was such an important thing, that actually came from the airline industry, where they try to sort of flatten the hierarchy so that
Mm,
anybody, regardless of how quote unquote important or not important they were, they could say, you know, uh, doctor, I have a safety concern,
mm,
and everything stops, and then you
mm,
address that safety concern. And what I think it's important for us to sort of develop in the culture is to say, now everybody gets to do that. You know,
sure.
if I'm a certified nursing assistant and I'm working in the setting that I feel is putting myself or my patients in danger, I should be able to speak up without the
Mm.
fear of retribution, without the fear that the person who's more important than me is going to feel threatened.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you on all of that. We don't have much time left, Paulo, but I want to get into one thing, and we got to get out of here. I said earlier that our country is facing another internal strife based on basically racism. I don't know any other way other than to call it racism. Your thoughts on what's happening in Minneapolis, St. Paul area? What's happened with Arbery in Georgia? What's happened with the young lady Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky? Philando Castile in I mean, it just seems, Paulo, that there's no making this stuff up. Some of us we get handcuffs, and some of us get a trip to the morgue. You got parents out there who are talking to their young boys, and I got a 19-year-old son, and I have to tell him, son, there's some things I just need you to make sure that you're aware of when you leave the house. Paulo, what do you see that's going on in America? From another part of the spectrum here.
It's just I don't have words. It's just
Yeah,
so shocking to see a representative of the government treat one of their citizens in that way.
sure.
It's just, and you got to figure that the tone that's set from the top, is it reverberates. I mean, to me, I feel like the issue is set by culture, and that we need to rethink the way that we do policing in this country.
Yeah,
Period.
yeah. Yeah, I think we're long past that right now. I think the conversation has got to be had. I think the fraternal, and I hate to call them out, but the fraternal order of police, they've got to come to the table, and they've got to be those ones who will sit up and say, "Look, we are no longer going to support wrong when wrong happens on the streets in our country. We just can't do it because that person is making the rest of the profession look extremely bad, and then we get to painting this broad brush, this broad stroke on all of them and all of those police officers. I got some great friends, great relatives who are loving, caring people working in our community, and they're sick to their stomach right now. They're
Yeah.
just sick at what they saw. And I'll call his name out, George Floyd. And there's plenty of others out there that have faced the same fate he has. Paulo, thank you so much again, man, for being on the show with us today. I'm going to have you on here every couple of. I wish I could have you on every day, man. You bring so much wisdom and knowledge to the program here, and your thoughts on transportation, mobility, but especially what we look like after COVID-19 as we're going toward hopefully the flattest curve we can find out there, which is zero, and we'll see what happens. And I guess that's vaccine though.
Well, yeah, it'll take more than that, I think. It'll take
Wow.
us all changing the way we do our daily lives, unfortunately.
Mm. Hey man, thanks again for showing up on Funky Politics with us, Paulo. We'll get you back here again.
Thanks, DC. This was fun.
All right, buddy. I'll be back with some closing thoughts. You know something? I tell you this all the time that when we have guests on our program, we try to bring you the latest and the greatest information, so you'll know what's happening not only in the South or in the East, but also in the Northwest. I mean, what's going on in Washington? What's going on in Oregon? What's going on in California? What's going on in New Mexico? We're going to have some really thought provoking guests as we continue this thing we call Funky Politics. Our country's as I consider it, at a standstill, not because of COVID-19 right now. We've got some other issues we got to deal with. We've got to deal with the issue of race in our country and why it is that black folk have got to be treated in such a way that we don't get a chance to see the inside of a court. We have to visit the morgue first. So On that note, we're hoping for a better day. We're hoping for a greater day. Someday it's going to come. And as Fannie Lou Hamer said, she said, you can pray until you faint, but until you get up off your knees and do something about it, God ain't going to just drop nothing in your lap. And on that note, I'll end it right there. Thank you so much for being with us again right here on Funky Politics, where we keep it real, we keep it right, and we got to show enough, keep it funky. I'm DC, and I'm out of here.